Hamburg, May 1945. The rubble still smoked when British forces crossed the Elbe. Among the displaced thousands stood Greta Hoffmann, 23 years old, hollow-eyed, her hands raw from 2 years of clearing debris. She had survived Operation Gomorrah, the firestorm that killed 37,000 in a single week of July 1943. She'd survived the collapse of everything she'd been taught to believe. What she couldn't survive was the reflection staring back from a broken window, the face of someone who'd forgotten what it meant to be human. Then a U.S. Navy sailor offered her a chocolate bar at a relief station, and she realized she'd forgotten what kindness looked like. Neither of them knew this moment would change everything. Before we continue, if you're enjoying these untold stories from World War II, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community around the world. Your support helps us bring these forgotten histories to light. Now, let's return to Hamburg, where two people from opposite sides of history were about to discover that even in the aftermath of total war, hope could still take root in the ruins. In that instant, watching her trembling fingers accept the chocolate, Petty Officer James Mitchell understood something that would haunt him for weeks. This wasn't occupation, this was survival. And the line between victor and victim had blurred into something far more complicated than anyone back in Ohio could possibly understand. The war in Europe had ended 13 days earlier. Hamburg bore the scars of both Allied bombing and Nazi tyranny. Between 1943 and 1945, over 213 raids had struck the city. Operation Gomorrah, alone at days in July 1943, had unleashed 9,000 tons of bombs. The RAF and U.S. 8th Air Force created the first true firestorm, with winds reaching 150 miles per hour and temperatures exceeding 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. 37,000 dead in a single week. Another 125,000 throughout the war. 1 million residents evacuated. 60% of residential buildings destroyed. By May 1945, Hamburg resembled a moonscape of shattered brick and twisted steel. St. Nicholas Church's spire stood skeletal against gray skies, a charred monument to what had been lost. The Elbe River still flowed, but the city that had grown along its banks had been reduced to a geography of absence. James Mitchell had arrived 2 weeks after British forces took the city. The U.S. Navy established logistics operations to support occupation forces. 25 years old, from Millfield, Ohio, population 3,000, James had joined the Navy in 1942. He'd served in the Atlantic, escorting convoys, hunting U-boats. He'd seen men die when torpedoes found their mark. War had been abstract and visceral at once distant explosions, close screams, mechanical violence that rendered human beings into statistics. But nothing had prepared him for Hamburg. Here, devastation had texture. It smelled of ash and decay. It sounded like wind whistling through broken walls and the shuffle of thousands trying to stay alive. It looked like Greta Hoffmann, educated, proud, reduced to wire-wrapped shoes and a torn coat. Standing in a ration line with dignity, she refused to surrender. The Navy had established a distribution center near the harbor, processing displaced persons and distributing relief supplies. James's job was simple: verify identities, distribute ration cards, maintain order. Everyone pretended there were clear rules for how conquerors should treat the conquered. There weren't, especially when the conquered looked like Greta, when they spoke carefully correct English learned from dead fathers who'd taught literature, when they looked at you with eyes that held both fear and something fiercer refusal to be broken. The non-fraternization policy was clear. Minimal contact with German civilians. No socializing, no relationships. Orders stated this explicitly. Reality proved more complicated. Greta returned 3 days later. Not for rations, she'd received her weekly allotment. She came seeking work. The Americans were hiring German women as clerks, translators, administrative support. Greta needed purpose beyond scavenging and surviving. James saw her in the applicant line and felt recognition jolt through him. He wasn't assigned to hiring, but he found himself suggesting they needed another translator, watching the hiring officer approve her application. That's how Greta Hoffmann became Clerk 247 at the U.S. Navy Logistics Center, Hamburg District. She reported in a clean gray dress, her dark hair pulled back with salvaged ribbon. James watched her move through the filing room with careful precision, organizing chaos into alphabetical order. They didn't speak for 2 weeks. Professional boundaries existed for reason. They orbited in the same administrative building, aware of each other constantly, maintaining appropriate distance. He found an excuse 2 weeks later. A filing questioned something any translator could answer. Her English was hesitant but clear. When their fingers brushed exchanging documents, the contact lasted less than a second. It echoed for hours afterward. That night, James brought a better English dictionary from the Navy library. Left it on her desk with a note, "For your studies, J.M." He watched from across the room as she found it during lunch, opened the cover. For the first time since meeting her, he saw her smile. Not big, just a small upward curve, gone almost instantly, but it transformed her face. June arrived with unexpected warmth. Greta's English improved rapidly. James found more excuses to visit her desk. Conversations revealed fragments. Her father had taught literature before the regime required teachers to preach ideology instead. He'd loved Goethe, believed German greatness meant culture, not conquest. The firebombing took him, her mother, her younger sister. All the same night, in July 1943. "Everyone lost someone," she said flatly. "This is not special grief." But James could see it was, could see her hands tremble, could see her blink rapidly, holding back tears that wouldn't come anymore. One evening in late June, he broke protocol, waited near the headquarters exit until she emerged. He suggested dinner at the American canteen, better food, a chance to talk beyond filing codes. "Why?" she asked, her voice carrying genuine curiosity. "Because you shouldn't have to eat alone," James said, "and because I'd like to talk to you, really talk." Something shifted in her expression wariness, giving way to tentative hope. "Yes," she said. "I am very hungry." The canteen was crowded. James brought her a tray loaded with more food than she'd probably seen in months. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, bread with real butter, apple pie. She stared at it like it might disappear. Ate slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite with intensity that made his throat tight. "Tell me about Ohio," she said suddenly. He described farm country, small-town life. She asked about his family. He mentioned parents, sisters, a brother in the Army Pacific Theater. 3 months without letters. "What was your father teaching?" James asked carefully. "Goethe, Schiller. He loved poetry." She was quiet, then added softly, "He would quote Goethe when things were difficult. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. That's beautiful." He believed it, she said. And for the first time, James heard anger underneath exhaustion. He believed in beauty, in culture, in German greatness, meaning art and philosophy. Not ... double quotes, she trailed off, unable to finish. Not war, not conquest, not the regime that destroyed everything her father believed in. They talked until the canteen closed. When they finally left, the evening had turned cool. James walked her toward the refugee housing district. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "This was very kind. Can I see you again?" The question came out urgently. "Not at the office. Like this?" She studied him in fading light. "Yes," she said finally. "I would like this." Over the next month, they fell into rhythm. James waited for her twice weekly. They'd go to the canteen or walk through reconstructing neighborhoods. She taught him German phrases. He brought books from the Navy library. Other clerks noticed. Gossip intensified. Greta ignored all of it. For the first time since the war ended, she felt something beyond exhaustion and grief. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. One evening in late July, they sat on church steps, sharing bread, watching sunset turn the Elbe golden. "What are you thinking?" James asked. Long silence, then softly, "I am thinking I did not expect to feel like a person again. Not just someone who survived, but someone who could have something." James took her hand first time he dared. "You are a person. You've always been a person." "But I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot what it felt like to want something beyond food and shelter." "What do you want now?" he asked, his heart hammering. She turned to look at him, eyes less haunted. "I want to remember how to hope," she said. "And you make me think, maybe I can." He kissed her, then gently, carefully. She kissed him back, hand touching his face with tenderness that made his chest ache. When they pulled apart, she was crying. Not sad tears, but something else. Relief. "I thought I would never feel this way again," she whispered. "I thought the war destroyed this part of me." "It didn't," James said firmly. You're still here. We're still here. But reality pressed against them. He was U.S. Navy on occupation duty. She was a German civilian in a defeated nation. Love might grow in ruins, but what future could it possibly have? August brought rumors that American forces would soon rotate home. James heard whispers possible reassignments, probability that by Christmas he'd be back in Ohio. The thought made him sick with anxiety. One evening in mid-August, Greta arrived with devastation in her eyes. She handed him an official notice. All German civilian workers would be reassigned to German administration by October. She would lose her job at headquarters. "I will not see you anymore," she said flatly. Panic rose in James's chest. "We'll find a way." "You can what?" Anger flashed. "You are Navy. You take orders. Soon you will leave Germany, go home to America, to a place where there are no ruins." "Come with me," he said, words coming out before he'd fully formed the thought. "When I go home, come with me." She stared at him. "What? Marry me?" His heart raced. "Marry me, and you can come to America as my wife. The Navy has procedures for war brides. There's paperwork, but it's possible." "James," she said his name carefully. "You cannot mean this." "Why not?" "Because you have known me for 3 months," she said, tears underneath her anger. "Because I am German and you are American. Because your family will hate me. Because everyone will always see enemy when they look at me. Because this is impossible." "But do you want it?" he pressed. "If it were possible, would you want to come to America with me?" She closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears streamed down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "God help me. Yes, I would rather be hated in America with you than alone in Hamburg without you. But James, we cannot just wish away reality." "Watch me," he said, pulling her close. "I don't know how I'll do it, but I can't leave you here. I love you." First time either had said it. "I love you too," she said softly. "This is why it hurts so much." The next morning, James went to his commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Patterson. James explained he wanted to marry a German civilian and bring her to the United States. Patterson listened in silence. "Do you understand what you're asking?" "Yes, sir. This process takes months, maybe years. You'll need approval from Navy Command, German authorities, U.S. immigration. Even if you marry here, she might not be allowed into the country." "Yes, sir, I understand." Patterson nodded slowly. "I'll tell you what's required. The rest is up to you. And Mitchell, you're going to need patience. Lots of it." He wasn't wrong. The paperwork was extensive Navy approval forms, German civilian certifications, character references, medical examinations, financial affidavits. James needed to prove he could support a wife, that Greta wasn't a security risk, that their relationship was genuine. But James persisted, filled out every form, gathered every document. Greta did the same, navigating the German administrative system. There was one critical obstacle: the marriage ban. While non-fraternization had been partially lifted in October 1945, marriages between American servicemen and German women remained forbidden until December 1946. But there were exceptions. Waivers. James applied for everything. In late September 1945, his waiver came through, one of the first granted in Hamburg. They could marry immediately. They wed in October in a simple civil ceremony. No white dress, no church, no family. Just them, 2 witnesses, and an official processing paperwork. When the official pronounced them married, and James slipped a simple gold band on Greta's finger, she looked at him with such fierce joy that nothing else mattered. "Greta Mitchell," she said softly. "It sounds ... American." "You are American now," he said. "I am yours," she corrected, and kissed him. But being married didn't solve immediate problems. James's reassignment came through in November rotation, back to United States. By December, Greta's immigration approval was still pending. For 6 weeks, they lived in agonizing limbo. James tried to delay reassignment. The Navy didn't make exceptions. Greta tried to expedite processing. The authorities moved at their own pace. In late November, 1 week before James shipped out, Greta's approval came through. She was authorized to immigrate as wife of U.S. Navy service member, effective immediately. December 1945, the Atlantic crossing took 8 days. Greta spent most of it seasick and terrified. She'd never been on a ship before, had never imagined leaving Europe. Other servicemen were returning home, some with war brides. The women formed tentative community: Japanese, Italian, French, British, Germinal, leaving behind everything they'd known. One evening, Greta stood on deck, staring at dark water. James found her at the railing. "What's going on in that head of yours?" "I am thinking," she said quietly, "that I survived firebombing, survived everything. And now I am crossing ocean to a place where everyone will know what I am, where I came from. And maybe drowning would have been easier." James turned her around, made her look at him. "You are the strongest person I've ever met. You survived things that would have broken most people. That's who you are, not your country, not the war, you." The ship docked in New York on December 18th. Greta's first sight of America was the Statue of Liberty emerging from morning fog. Impossibly tall, torch raised like a promise. "Welcome home," James whispered. When they cleared customs and walked into New York winter, the shock hit her fully. A city that wasn't ruins. Buildings stood whole. Streets clear of rubble. People wearing unbroken clothes, cars moving. Shops with goods. Everything functioned. Greta stopped on the sidewalk and stared. "There is no damage," she said numbly. "Everything is ... whole." James understood what she was feeling, the vast chasm between her reality and his. The war didn't happen here, not like it did in Europe. The Navy arranged base housing in Norfolk Building, full of international families, war brides from a dozen countries, all navigating the same strange territory. Greta made friends with other German war brides, women who understood what it meant to carry unearned guilt, to constantly translate not just language but entire worldviews. James thrived in Navy work. Greta found employment at the base library, her fluency in multiple languages an asset. She organized foreign language collections, translated documents, taught basic German. In 1947, she became pregnant. Bringing a child into the world felt like the ultimate statement of hope. Their daughter was born in February 1948. They named her Anna after Greta's mother. Holding her infant daughter, Greta felt something shift, not forgetting what she'd survived, but finally believing she might build something new. Over the years, Greta built a life in America. She never lost her accent, never stopped carrying the weight of where she'd come from, never forgot the sound of Hamburg burning. But she learned to carry those memories alongside new ones. Anna's first steps, family Christmases, James's promotions, the birth of their son Michael in 1951. She became an American citizen in 1952, swearing the oath while James held their children. The judge who administered it was a veteran who'd served in Europe. When he shook her hand, he said quietly, "Welcome home, Mrs. Mitchell, truly." Greta Mitchell lived to be 89, dying peacefully in 2011, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. By then, the war had receded into history. Germany had rebuilt and reconciled, becoming America's ally. At her funeral, her daughter Onal, a professor of German literature, following the grandfather she'd never met, told the story of how her parents met. "My mother used to say, 'Love wasn't magic,'" Anna told the mourners. "It was choice. Every single day, she and my father chose each other. They chose to believe two people from opposite sides of history could build something beautiful together. And they were right." James had died 5 years earlier. At his funeral, Greta had whispered words he couldn't hear. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for offering me chocolate when I had forgotten what sweetness tasted like. Thank you for making me remember I was still human." She'd kept the chocolate wrapper all those years, pressed between pages of her father's Goethe. A reminder of the moment kindness broke through devastation and changed everything. Their love story wasn't simple or easy. It didn't erase the war or make trauma disappear. But it proved something important, that even in the aftermath of terrible destruction, even across chasms of culture and history, human connection could still bridge the impossible. That two people who had every reason to be enemies could choose instead to build a life together.